Hi guys, so today we're back. We're going to be talking about Uranus in the third house. Quick overview, we have Uranus, have unexpected ideas, unexpected changes, sudden eureka moments, innovation, rebellion, excitement, and a little tad of friendliness. And then when it comes to the third house, we have our early childhood education, we have our neighbors, we have our siblings, we also have our sibling relationship dynamic, we have our speech, we have our ways of communicating, and we have our ways of thinking. So when we have Uranus in the third house, we can start small and expand here. That's how I'm feeling for this placement. It can start off with things being unusual as far as how we speak, and this can manifest in a very small way as an unusual voice. You may have an unusual affect, or when you're speaking, people may be trying to place an accent, but they may not really be able to sense where you're from because there is no cohesiveness in how you're speaking. It's unusual. There is a sort of pattern that we all speak with. If you guys have ever heard Elon Musk talk, and I know like the South African accent is not super common, but it's like, is it German? Is it French? Is it South African? Is it British? Is it American? It's like if you were closing your eyes and listening to a person with Uranus in the third house speak, you may be just like not really know where to place them, not really be able to put your finger on it. And that's usually because the third house is about our early childhood education. It's also about like those early years. The first house is like, when you're a baby and it's the first minute that you've come into the world. The second house is like when you're a toddler and you're feeling and you're learning resources. And then the third house is when you are finally learning how to speak and learning how to move around and knowing a bit more about your siblings and your neighborhood. So this time in your life probably was very unusual. And this could be because your early learning environment was unusual. It could be maybe you were homeschooled or you were taught at home. So the way you may pronounce certain things or how you may speak or how you may read things may not be the way that everyone else does it. When we speak, it's really an amalgamation of everything that we hear around us. Uranus in the third house is also about sudden changes, and this is also about our early childhood education. So it's very likely that you switched schools a lot and you had a lot of different educational experiences when you were growing up. I had Uranus transiting my third house from about maybe 7, 8 years old. And I want to say that it was so crazy because I went to a different school every year. And that's very likely something that happened to you. A literal different school every year. And the school every year was different. Sometimes the school was full of white kids. Sometimes the school was full of black kids. Sometimes it was a religious-based school. Sometimes it was a public school. Sometimes it was a very wealthy school. And then sometimes it was a very poor, free neighborhood school. So when you are in all these places, you're picking up a little bit of slang and a little bit of the way you pronounce your words and the way that you flow through a sentence from one school, and then you're going over somewhere else and you're picking that up, and then you're picking this up from this friend and that friend. And so tends to be what results in, as you grow up, there's just a lack of cohesiveness where people are just like, where you from? And they just can't really figure it out. And it could also be at the same time because the third house is about our neighbors and our neighborhood, our immediate environment. As soon as we step outside of our front door, that you probably moved a lot as a kid. So not only are you going to these different schools, or maybe that's why you're going to different schools, is because you moved a lot. And so now you've got, new neighbors and all these different, you're in a constantly different environment at a time where you're learning how to speak. And so it's just like I said, little bits. And it could also just be that you value individuality and you value uniqueness when you do speak. So you may go out of your way to use words that are uncommon or phrases that are uncommon that you may really like, that you maybe heard, just a one-off somewhere, and you're like, hey, I like that. And then you use it regularly, but maybe nobody in your town really uses that slang, and things go in and out of fashion. Just like back in the day, it's, hey, you jive turkey, but you don't really say jive turkey in 2025. If you're texting, people say, oh, LOL, or that's funny AF, funny as fuck. Like, you may not say that. You may say something totally else, or you may use those phrases or those words with people who don't really use that. So it's kind of just like, people are trying to feel you. But no matter what, people immediately get that you are a unique individual because of how you speak. When people are closing their eyes and they can't really place who you are or where you're from or how you grew up, they want to pay attention more. They're like, okay, this person is different. This person is unique, and I gotta learn more. Also, in valuing unique speech and unique communication, you may also text or write in a different way. I knew a girl and she would write all of her words in a column. Like they would all have equal spaces between them. And then it was just very interesting. Your handwriting could be very interesting. The way that you text could be very interesting. Like you might text in all caps, or I have a friend who, whenever he texts the word shit instead of S-H-I-T, he texts C-H-I-T. It's just like his thing. He's the only person I know who does that, but that's just the way that he texts. So it'll be things like that that separate you and show your uniqueness to the people around you. The third house is also about your mind. It's about the way that you think. So when you have Uranus here, it gives you a very, very creative mind. You have a mind that really needs stimulation because you can tend to get bored very quickly, and that makes you really want to move on to something new. This is sudden highs and lows. This is sudden polarities, is Uranus. So any conversation, any person that you're talking to, any movie, any podcast, anything where you're having to use your Mercury and pay attention, and it is cliche in any way, if it's predictable, if you already know what's going to happen, even if it's moving a little bit too slow, you're going to very quickly lose interest and look for the next thing. You want a conversation that is interesting. You want to talk to people where you're talking about things that you've never talked about before, where people are bringing up conversation topics or posing questions to you in a conversation where you're like, I never thought about that, or nobody ever asked me that before, or oh, this is what I think, or somebody, you really appreciate someone who has a different view from you and someone who is not afraid to show their uniqueness in the realm of a conversation. You don't want a yes man. Everyone is like maybe saying their opinion about politics or something in your hometown. Maybe everyone's just kind of parroting the same thing, because that's what tends to usually happen. You really appreciate the person who's like, no, this is what I think, especially if it's different, and you appreciate how they came to get to that idea, like the journey that they took mentally to arrive at that conclusion. You appreciate that. You value uniqueness of thought. You value your own uniqueness of thought. Any thought that you have is something that you really do. It's gonna sound silly, but think about it's you're not a person who is easily just fed things and you just accept. You don't just watch the news or read a book or even sometimes read a study and think like, oh yeah, you really want to think for yourself. I think the tendency with Uranus a lot of times is to be so rebellious, and that could make it so that even when you are reading things or learning about things that have been like studied, peer reviewed studied, and been, it's from a university and it's been like top doctors and, all the best of the best and the smartest of the smartest and the geniuses in their field can work on something and put out a piece of literature or an article. And because you value uniqueness of thought, you may not accept it. And this can lead to, even though you have a creative mind, people who can tend to veer more off into being a bit, I don't want to say too eccentric, but a bit too eccentric if this placement is not evolved. If a doctor is telling you that they've studied something and this is what they think, and you're not a doctor, it's not really on you to disagree with them. That's just my Libra moon and my balance, but that's a lot of what can tend to happen because you don't want to conform to thought. And even though sometimes believing in science can be seen as conforming to thought to you, you just want to make sure that you always have your own ideas. You never just want to be a puppet or a sheep of the mind. The book 1984 comes to mind, where the main character in the book really doesn't want to be told what to think and what to do. He wants to have his own thoughts, and he values that so much that he even risks his own life for it. So I know this is like a super popular book, but if you haven't read it, 1984. And also, if you are bored, it's really likely that you would be interested or do well to have a lot of hobbies, a lot of things that you're interested in. Having a lot of friends, having a lot of hobbies and groups and clubs that you go through throughout the week keeps your mind fresh. It keeps you new, keeps thoughts new, and it's really good for you, and you're really good for it because you have these sudden eureka ideas. So let's just say you're in a glass blowing class. Everyone may be blowing the glass how they're being taught to. Maybe they're adding their little spin or whatever, but you'll have completely different idea, a completely new idea that will just sort of pop into you and just come out of nowhere. And you really tend to shock other people and even shock yourself with like people, you just doing something that people usually just haven't done before, or that they've not seen too often, or just something really unique. And that's also what makes you great at your hobbies. And I would say great at being an artist is because, if everyone's painting up and down, you'll be the one to paint in a swirl and then throw something on it. And that's just a metaphor to say that creativity and innovation really go together. You may have a bit of unusual thoughts. You may have a bit of an unusual neurodivergent train of thought. You may be speaking or describing something to someone, and not necessarily in a Piscean way where even the Pisces person is talking and they kind of just get lost. You may be speaking to someone, describing your thought process, and they're just maybe like, I don't follow you. Like, you've explained it well and I understand what you're saying, but I don't follow why you even did that. And so you will feel maybe at times a bit of isolation or a bit of separateness from other people because you really do believe in the power of your own mind and the power of your own thoughts and thinking your own way, even if people are not really following you. You're like, you know what, I follow me, and that's okay. Things that seem a bit off are actually appealing to you. Like I said about, the scientific study, if 10,000 of our nation's top doctors did a study, you would be a lot less receptive to that if you are a more unevolved Uranus in the third than you would be to something a little bit odder, something a little bit more mysterious, something a little bit more off the beaten path. You can fall prey, or a person with this doesn't always have to mean fall prey to conspiracy theories or poor judgment, simply because you can really be attracted to the uniqueness and the differentness and just the separateness of, the tabooness of what a conspiracy theory is and what it means to think something different. And so just pieces of advice as we take in the good and bad of each placement is that try to use your best judgment and not fall prey to thinking patterns that are destructive simply because they're unique. Just because something is unique doesn't necessarily make it correct. The things that you say can be shocking to people because this is also the house of communication. So it can be something, as we've talked about, the trains of thought or the things that you're interested in, but it could also be something like just wrong place, wrong time, wrong person. I always use the employees at the water cooler analogy. Maybe you just start talking about, maybe your boss gives you guys like, hey, we're not talking about politics right now. And then you go up and you're just, right in front of everyone. You might say to your coworker, like, hey, what do you think about Charlie Kirk? And it's just like, everyone's just like, no, not right now. Not if ever. Like, that can be you. But you are, like I said, really drawn to those unique conversations, and you pull those out on purpose at inappropriate times because you want to see what people are going to say. When you shock people with something that's very controversial, and at an off-guard time, you want to get the real response. You're like, I want to see your individuality in your speech. I want to see you. I want to know what you really think. So yeah, I'm going to ask you about this incredibly charged political topic at an incredibly inappropriate time. Because if I catch you off guard, you may just give me, you don't have time to really think, and you may just give me the real you. However, if you have a tendency to do that, and I understand why you're doing that, I really do. On the other hand, to other people, they may perceive it as putting them in an uncomfortable situation to deal with maybe social pushback later after the conversation that they don't really want to deal with. So just keep that in mind. However, I do really respect this placement's uniqueness when it comes to speech, not just spewing out what's politically correct or what we think we should say, but it's like, no, let's say what we really want to say. I'm a Sag Sun and Sag Rising, so there's something about that craziness and that uniqueness to speech and that individuality when we speak that I really do understand, I really do respect. A part of some of the shocking things that you say could be radical and progressive ideas, and this can be very shocking to people, but this can be this is like the higher octave of Uranus and Aquarian energy, is that you are so not bound to what people tell you to think and the ways in which people arrive at a conclusion or people's thought processes. You are thinking for yourself. So, and you're also very progressive. You have a progressive mind and a humanitarian mind, less in a Piscean way of overpouring of compassion and more of a logical way, like, hey, that doesn't really make sense. This is a human being. I'm a human being. Why should we treat these human beings different or lesser or whatever? So you can have very progressive ideas, and these can be very shocking to people because they may not be bound. People may not be ready. I can just say like that. People may not be ready to hear the progressiveness that you have inside your mind because their minds have not wandered that far, because the news has not wandered that far, because society's mind has not wandered that far. You guys are the people that if there was slavery and it's back in the day and you're a white person, you may be like, we need freedom and we need equality. And people may just be like, so it's just can be so far ahead of your time. And that's really the beauty of it. You can at sometimes receive some pushback, but I really urge you guys to go ahead with these ideas, because we need that constant progressive change. Whenever you look back in history and you think about how different things were then to how different they are today, that is because of Aquarian and Uranian type people that massively push us into the future, massively push us along, not just in a technological way, which Uranus also covers, but in a social, progressive, societal way, where women and men are equal and there's no slavery and we have minimum wage, and there's an asterisk next to everything I just said, but you understand what I mean. The best thing you can do with these ideas when you have them is to find other people who also have these same ideas, because when you guys band together, because Uranus is also about groups, I just love all this Uranian energy. It all goes well with each other. You guys can make such a great impact on the world with your ideas and really bring it into fruition when you're with a group. You can do it solo too, but I know that you guys won't mind being a part of a group and valuing a group, simply because that's the Uranus energy anyway. Back to early childhood education for a little bit. Like I said in the beginning, you may have moved around and this could have affected your speech and how you talk. However, it also can make you very popular. Not always, but it can. And that's because you are so adept at, especially because these are your formative years, picking up a little bit from this person. You're not just picking up slang, even though that's how people may initially, that could be the slang, and the differentness of speech can be the first thing that people pick up on. It's sort of like you're like wearing it on your sleeve, but when you speak. But you can be popular because simply you've been around so many different kind of people. You can be around white people, you can be around black people, you can be around Asian people, religious people, rich people, poor people. And so now when you're an adult and you're out in the world, you know how to speak to everybody. You know how to joke with everyone. Okay, this group of people, let's get to it. Let's just say if you're, usually a younger white woman, you may really love Taylor Swift. And you may know that because you may have went to school with a bunch of Swifties. At the time, my Uranus in the third house was transiting and I was going to all these different schools, there was a Taylor Swift fan club, and the school was majority white and it was very, very wealthy. And I've also gone to other schools where, or just been in other environments where people like Sexy Red or Suki Hana are seen as someone to look up to, or, female role models or whatever. Very opposite in their presentation. However, because we, and I say we because I've gone through the transit, do this, we know how to befriend everyone. We know all the musical groups, we know all the shows, we know all the slang, we know all the ways of dress, we know how to interact with all these different people because we've done it. And that makes us very popular, that makes us very friendly, that allows us to have a lot of friends in our neighborhood and a lot of friends in our life and a lot of friends from our childhood that we may carry into adulthood, because we're not put off if someone is a bit different from us or someone is not exactly a clone of us. Yes, it's important to have those friends. I do have those friends where I'm like, oh my God, me too. Oh my God, me too. Like, it's nice to have that rapport and that bond, but it's also nice to step outside of your comfort zone. And it's also a skill that will really help you in your life if you're trying to advance your career, if you just want to have a big social circle, or if you're really trying to get your progressive ideas met. You can really do that because you really know how to weave in and out and talk to everyone. People feel accepted by you because you are accepting, and then they accept you. And that's really how the Uranian and Aquarian friendship, that's why that theme goes with that sign and that planet, because you're accepting the differences. And a caveat, even though you may be popular, you can still feel a bit detached, because this is about detachment. It's a little bit about coldness. It's just about technology, a bit of I don't want to say lack of emotion, but you're not as emotional, so you can feel a bit detached from your third house. Even though you may make all these friends and you may know how to integrate into all these different groups because you've done it, you may have this feeling that you don't really know where you fit in, or you don't really know where you belong, or you don't really know who you are. You don't really know how you want to speak, because all of these different things are in you. And that's very valid. If you've gone to all these different places, if you have all these different friends, if you've lived in all these different sorts of communities, who are you really? If you could go back in time and do it again, and you could only pick one neighborhood, or you could only pick one school or one group of friends, who would you pick? And that may be a time where you feel a bit detached because you're like, I don't think any of them really calls to me 100%. They all sort of call to me. I'm made up of all these different pieces, but what's the biggest piece? What's the majority piece? And so that is something that, probably in therapy or just in self-reflection, you may really think on, like, Who am I? Who was I? How did this school change me? Or how did this neighbor or this neighborhood change me? And what did it change? Or what was the same? What did I bring? These are really good questions, like really a lot of food for thought there. And now the third house comes to siblings, and it's also our sibling dynamics. So when you have Uranus here, your sibling slash siblings could have been very Uranian in nature, meaning they could have literal Aquarius placements. They may have Uranus in prominent parts of their chart, such as 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th. Or it could just be that they just have certain themes around them, such as having a lot of friends. If you have siblings, it's very highly likely that they have a lot of friends, and friends that, like friendships that are strong, that last throughout a lifetime. They may be very quirky, very individualistic. They may very much march to the beat of their own drum. Could be seen as kind of weird or oddball, but like in a cool way, because they are just so accepting of being different, dressing different, looking different, talking different, because they're like, hey, this is me, and they don't shy away from that. And so you may feel very inspired. You are very inspired because you have Uranus in the third from them. Again, that ties back into this whole uniqueness of self, uniqueness of speech and expression and thought. A lot of that could be inspired by your siblings. Your siblings could very much be into progressive causes. They could be going to marches or be a part of groups that progress things in a certain way, like humanitarian type causes. Your sibling can also feel like your friend. A lot of us have siblings, and I hear all different kind of dynamics. The question here, and the question I can pose to everyone is, would you still be friends with your sibling if they weren't your sibling? For me, I can say yes. However, for a lot of people, it's like a hard no. There can be a feeling of camaraderie, of friendship, when you have Uranus in the third. There can really be a feeling of like, I just think my sibling is so cool. I think if I met them and they were my coworker, or if I met them at school or whatever, I would still want to be their friend. I like XYZ about them. And because they're already friendly, it can just feel like that. It's like you may see two people out at a restaurant and you may think, oh, they're just friends hanging out. And it could be like, no, this is my sister, or this is my brother. And there's just a really nice bond going on, a really nice ease and a familiarity. Siblings and friends. I can't stress that enough. Now, because Uranus is the planet of extremes, it could be the opposite. It could be that you maybe have a very cold or maybe detached or just unstable relationship with your sibling. It could be your fault, their fault, or it could be both, or maybe it's just, it could be circumstance. Maybe you guys have maybe like different dads but the same mom, so you guys are like, I don't know, moving, or there could be like a divorce or something like that, where you feel like sometimes your sibling may feel like your friend. Sometimes it may feel like they're not your friend. Sometimes they might be super close and then you might not hear from them for 4 months. You may not really ever know where they're at or what they're doing. They may be very much marching to the beat of their own drum and maybe leaving you out in the dust. So these are also possible manifestations. However, I mostly see it as, even with that, there's still the nature of friendship underlying everything. Like how you can have a friend for quite a few years. Maybe you guys have times where you don't talk so much, and then you come back like nothing ever happened. So I think that's a lot of the energy that's going on with that. Your siblings, your neighbors, your cousins, they can also very much be a surprise to you. They can very much pop out of nowhere. You could be a type of person who does 23andMe, be like, oh my God, I didn't know I had a sister in Utah. Or, oh, you could know your siblings, but maybe they surprise you. Maybe, you know, you're talking, maybe they live cross country, and you're talking, and out of nowhere they're like, yeah, you know, been in a relationship, it's kind of serious. Your sibling can always just surprise you, whether it's their presence surprising you, like, oh, I didn't know I had a sibling, or it's something that they do that can surprise you. And your neighbors and your neighborhood will have this very same energy. You'll perceive them as quirky, as unique, as different. You'll perceive them as not following societal norms. Again, dressing, speaking, acting, behaving in ways that they want to behave, but that somebody else might be like, I don't really see the majority of other people acting like that. And that also, because those are in your formative years, much like your siblings, inspires you. Like, you know what? I'm going to be me, and I'm not going to just dress, act, speak, and say the things that I know the society around me wants me to say. So at the end of the day, my advice for you guys would be to keep on marching to the beat of your own drum, to seek out friends, to seek out people places, things, and hobbies that really allow you to be yourself, that are constantly new and interesting, and to really put forth your progressive ideas. You guys are really meant to change the world with them. And a bit of caution would be to don't be so rebellious to the point that you end up hurting yourself if something is widely accepted and widely regarded. It could be for a reason. I remember when I was younger, everybody watched Game of Thrones, and I was like, oh my God, like everyone watches the show. So, and I just felt like a rebel, like I wasn't gonna watch it. And then a couple years later, after it went off, I watched, and I was like, I see what everyone was talking about. It was amazing. Don't be so contrarian just for the sake of being contrarian. Be it when it counts. So guys, that's my advice for you. That was the video today, Uranus in the third house. Please drop down, tell me what you think, and let's have a conversation in the comments. And I'll see you guys next time.